Why do we say we want to do something and yet we don't? That question fascinates me. Starting a business can be one of the most rewarding things you do. The reason that I started mine was I wanted to create my own path. Should I start a business? Should I negotiate my salary? These are all things that I teach in my programs. People who have something the world needs to hear, they might not be sure of their idea yet. It's super common. The other common objection is I don't have time. It's too long to be thinking about something for years and not doing something about it. Every entrepreneur of any scale has some crazy failures. For me, that first ebook and getting called a sellout was mortifying. It felt like a betrayal from my readers. So I think in life you need to be very careful who you take advice from. That was what I learned. But part of living a rich life is being honest with what am I spending on and why. What we do is we help people find that idea. We help them test it with the market. We have Excel consultants, we have interior designers, stylists, and we show them how to take what they're naturally good at and turn that into a business. Once you get those first 2 or 3 customers, first one might be grandma, second one might be your sister, but the third one means it's not a fluke. And suddenly you can grow. If you can make 100, you can make 1,000. If you can make 1,000, you can make a lot more. So that's what we teach.
New York City is a great city. Every block, every neighborhood is different. Such a powerful environment.
It's a town, I think, where there's so much opportunity. There's also a lot of pressure. It says you either make it or we're going to go on to the next person.
New York has a mystique that tends to draw the most talented people in the United States and indeed the world to it.
I am back from New York City. It was crazy, it was noisy, and it was full of incredible guests. And one of those is Ramit Sethi. And he is the founder of I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is an incredible company and blog and teaching place where he tries to get you around that one important question, which is, how do I live a rich life? Now, that doesn't always correlate to how much money you make. And Ramit goes really deep into your psyche and finds out what is that strange relationship you have with money. How can you figure it out and spend your money wisely so your life becomes rich? And we went really into depth here about how you can sit down with your partner and speak to your husband, your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend about their relationships with money so you can come together and find a consensus. He actually gave detailed advice about how to ask your boss for a raise. He talked about whether you should own a home, whether you should get loans for your university. And I'm just a big fan of his mentality and the way he talks about money. He's a Stanford graduate. He started this on a whim as a blog, and it turned into a business that's changed so many people's life, and I was really excited to sit down with him. He's a great communicator, a great vibe, and I know you're gonna learn a lot about your money and what it really means to be rich. So sit back and enjoy Ramit Sethi. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ramit Sethi, the American personal finance expert, author, and entrepreneur. You launched the I Will Teach You to Be Rich blog while studying at Stanford University and now have over 1 million people reading your material. Forbes magazine named you the new finance guru, and you've been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Fortune magazine, Fox Business, and CNBC. The New York Times bestselling book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, details your plan for anyone to achieve the rich life and has more than 20,000 documented success stories. Ramit, welcome to London Real in New York City.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. I know we've been trying to do this for like 3 or 4 years.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I've been a big fan for a long time of like everything you do, your copy, your courses, your mindset. So this is great. And I want to jump into this. You know, I had someone at my studio about 4 years ago come in, and we had about 30 people in the audience. And he said to everybody, what is your relationship with money? And everybody just stopped. And he said, shout out one word. And everyone started shouting out words, including me. And it was a crazy, crazy range. Some people said happiness. Some people said hate, problems, pain, dirty,
And it was this crazy range, and I started to understand that everyone has a twisted relationship with money, including me. And
what was your word?
You know, I think I said hassle or something.
Ooh.
Now, I was post-banking, and I came out of there thinking that look, I grew up with the American dream. I thought money would make me happy. You know, I went into banking, and it took me 40 years, even with an MIT education, for me to finally realize my increasing bank balance wasn't making me happy. So I went into broadcasting, and I thought money was bad. So I wasn't charging for anything. I was putting out free content. So I had a dysfunctional relationship. And so it's taken me a while to re-educate myself. What I love about your stuff is that you really get down to the core of it. It's not necessarily about a balance sheet look. It's about the emotion and this quote unquote rich life. So how did you figure this stuff out? And then how did you figure out to make it your life's work? Because as a Stanford grad, everyone's expecting you to start Google. And you're like, no, I'm gonna do this thing.
Yeah, I don't wake up in the morning and I don't get excited about a Roth IRA, I'll tell you that. But I do think money is an easy way into understanding human behavior. And I love the question that was asked at your event, what's your relationship with money? Because most people, when I ask that question, they go like this. They're rigid. And the answers are typically guilt, overwhelm, anxiety. Sometimes we have people who say freedom, which is awesome. But when I ask them, what does freedom mean? Their answer is always, I want to do what I want, when I want. I say, okay, what do you want to do? And then they go silent because they've never typically probed beyond that. And so I got interested in money many years ago because I took my college scholarship money and I invested it in the stock market. And this is when I thought I was a genius, 1999, everybody's a genius. And then I lost half my money like that.
Was it the dot-com boom?
Yeah.
Did that help? Okay.
Well, that's why I thought I was a genius.
Right.
It turned out it was just crazy times. And so
Stanford scholarship money in the stock market. Did your parents know what you were doing?
They did. They were like, my dad had encouraged me to open up a Roth IRA when I was like 15 years old. So he was like, yeah, whatever. But in retrospect, although I lost that money, that amount, it was a really valuable lesson because it humbled me. And it taught me that much of the stuff that I had heard about money just wasn't true. The things that we hear, like you need to be understanding PE ratios, you need to be sitting in a dark room with green letters scrolling on your screen. That stuff has no connection to reality for ordinary people. So I started learning about money as I was in college. I was watching TV shows, reading books, and I was also studying human behavior. And then it was that moment where, like in that book, The Emperor Has No Clothes, you realize that so much of the advice we have heard is just not true or it's not applicable. You know, I saw people going on TV saying, don't spend money on lattes. And I bet everybody watching this has heard someone tell them, cut back $3 a day, 700 years from now, you can have $100,000 in the bank. And I would look at my friends, we're like, who wants to live like that? Like, I want to go out. I want to buy a round of drinks for my friends. And so there's this disconnect of the advice that was out there and the way that my friends and I wanted to live. And that got me interested in starting to explore money.
That's your psychology degree coming in.
Totally.
Right. So you've always been interested in the human mind to a certain extent?
The human behavior. Why do we say we want to do something and yet we don't? That question fascinates me. Why do we claim we want to lose weight, but we don't track our food or go work out? Why do we claim, especially in our 40s, that money is the most concerning thing, and yet most of us have never read one book on money? Why? And that's what's fascinating. I think money is an easy way to get that wedge in because everybody has these money messages they grew up with. Whether it was our mom sitting around at dinner saying, we don't talk about money in this house, or easy come, easy go, or that person's rich because they had to step on someone else to get there. These are money messages that we may have heard growing up. We all have different ones. And I had my own that I grew up with 2 immigrant parents who immigrated from India. And we learn them, and sometimes they serve us really well. Like I learned some awesome messages as I was young. But I also learned some that started to not serve me as I grew my business, as I grew my income, and as I started to craft my own type of rich life.
It's interesting how you say that people want enough money to retire. I want enough money to finally have the room, and then they don't know what they want to do.
Well, this is what drives me crazy. So this idea that one day I will have enough money to do what I truly want. And the idea is one day I will finally go to the gym. One day I will finally travel. One day I will finally do all these hobbies. It's living life serially, like as if you're gonna do A, then B, then C.
One day I will finally be happy.
Bingo, that's the ultimate. And what we discover is that as you get older, the ability, the muscle to do those things atrophies. You don't turn 65 and then suddenly become an adventurous traveler. And you don't become 65 and suddenly say, yeah, I'm gonna change my life about this. Now you could, but it's prohibitively difficult. And so what I would rather do is say, I wanna live a life today where I'm earning more, I'm spending time on fitness, I'm traveling, family, and I actually think that society has started to tell us you can't do that. They've actually lowered the standards. You should just be happy you have a job. Forget about retirement. That's not even gonna be around when you retire. Instead, what we can do is to say, you know what, I'm taking back control. I'm gonna surround myself with people who are into self-development, who are successful, and I'm gonna see the secret skills and habits that they use, and I'm gonna adopt them for myself.
I think you're alluding to it, but maybe you could tell us what you call is the rich life. And I think this is really important because it's not necessarily what people think it is. People might think it means you got the Bentley and the private jet, but you think that's not what the rich life needs to be, right?
Yeah, I think that when you ask people, what does rich mean? The answers are so fascinating. So first off, they say, I want to pay off all my debt. And I just think to myself, if that is your dream, it's no wonder you're not living a rich life. Because who gets motivated by saying, I want to go from -10 to 0? 0 is not aspirational. It may be if you're in that time period, but dream bigger. There's more to life than being at 0 debt. The second answer I get is $1 million. Where'd that number come from? Like, are you 20? Are you 50? Do you live in Manhattan? Do you live in Kansas? Clearly that number's just picked out of thin air. And you know, the third is just, I want to do what I want when I want. And again, when I ask them what, they haven't really dialed it in. When I think about a rich life, what I encourage people to do is to get super specific. When I moved to New York, my dream was to be able to take a taxi instead of going on the subway if I had to go to a meeting in summer. The cost, irrelevant, $3, whatever. But for me, that was rich. Then it was to be able to order appetizers, because when I was a kid, we never did that, right? We went out once a month, we had a coupon, we went to a pizza place.
Right.
That was life.
Sounds like my mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, as you get older, maybe more successful, your dreams get bigger. But the specificity there was amazing. And so when people say, my rich life is, like, I like to eat out, I say, awesome, you like to eat out, I love that. What would you do if you could quadruple your spending on that? And this is called a money dial. It's like a stereo dial. You could turn that dial up.
What do people say to that?
Okay, so they always say the same.
Out.
They go, I would eat out 4 times a week. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. They always go linearly, as if they would do the thing they love, and then they would do it 4 times more. And I ask them, where do you eat out? And they'll be like, Chipotle. I'm like, you're spending 2 times, 4 times, 10 times more on that money dial, that thing you love. Are you still gonna be eating at Chipotle? And you can see their eyes go like this, because they've never considered that the money lens through which they're viewing the world might change. So I had a guy in DC when I was on tour, and he said, my money dial is eating out. And I said, what would you do if you could quadruple it? He said, 4 times. I said, really? What would you do? Think about your dream, your money dial. And he gets quiet and he says, I have a list of every Michelin-starred restaurant in DC. I would go to each one. And then I said, who would you take with you? The room is completely silent. He goes, I would take my family. Why? Because they have never been able to afford to eat at a place like that. So this concept of a rich life is so challenging because it's not linear. If you love clothes, if you turn that dial way up, if that's the thing you love, then you can spend extravagantly on that, and you can cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. So if you love clothes, you might not shop at the same place. You might fly to Italy and go to the factory where it's made by hand. If you love fitness, you might hire a trainer. If you love philanthropy, you might give 10 times the money and 10 times your time. But this is the beauty of a rich life. It's customized to you. It's totally different than anyone else. And in fact, the more you dial it in, the more crazy you're gonna seem to other people. And that's exactly the way it should be.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I mean, when I first started making some money in Wall Street, I said, I'm never gonna fly anything less than business class. I know this is one thing you like as well. And 5 years up to that, I was like, when I make it, I'm gonna do this one thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. The other thing I like to do is I like to spend money on hotel rooms. And when we go places, my wife, she's always like, why are we spending so much? And I'm like, honey, I've realized that's the thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I don't need a car. I don't need a benzo. I don't need all this stuff because that doesn't make me happy. So let me do this. I've probably been listening to you as well. And so that stuff can really dial up your happiness because it triggers all those weird things from your childhood. I'm taking the family with me. I'm finally showing them maybe that I made it. I'm treating them. That can give you a boost of happiness as opposed to getting the same Mercedes-Benz that the next door neighbors have that you might think makes you the rich life, but it actually doesn't make you feel good.
That is exactly it. And that is where so many of our challenges come from when it comes with money. When you ask people, what do you think about money? And they say, I'm anxious, overwhelmed, guilty. And you start asking them, where do you spend your money? It starts to reveal everything. First off, most people don't know where they spend their money. That's okay. I'm not gonna blame anyone.
Why? Because they don't want to look at it? It's like a horror movie?
Yeah, okay, so if you take any personal finance book, I challenge anyone, go to a bookstore, look at the first chapter of any money book. Do you know what it tells you to do?
Save.
It says, pull out all your receipts from the last year, let's make a budget, where are you spending your money? And you know what people do? They go, no, that sounds horrible, let's put this back on the shelf. People do not want to know where their money is because they know that they're probably doing something wrong. And if there's one thing humans are really good at, it is avoiding pain. So in this book, which is really a psychology book disguised as a money book, I started off by picking one area that we all have, one area that we are all kind of bad at, and one area we can improve quickly, and that's credit cards. So people have credit cards, they don't understand how credit cards screw them, and if they have information like read these words off this page and you will get your fees waived or your interest rate lowered, suddenly they're like, oh my God, this works and I can take control. So people don't understand where their money's going. That's okay. We can get to that later. But that's not the first thing you start with. It's like you wouldn't take someone who wants to lose 100 pounds and start benching 225. That would make no sense. You want to start off gradually, meet them where they are, and work from there. So with people and money, when they don't know where their money's going, they know that it's probably not doing the right thing, but they don't really want to sit there and fiddle with it and have to spend hours a day tracking a budget. What they want is for it to go where it needs to go and for them to be able to go out and spend on the things they love. It's pretty much that simple. Hence, if you try to give people these things that require them to cut back on $3 lattes for the rest of their life, they're just gonna go, that doesn't sound that good to me, no thanks. So if you start from a place of what they love, like what is your money dial? And if I were to ask you, and we got to hotel rooms, which by the way, I love that. I love awesome hotels. So we start with what you love and we say why. For me, I went on a 6-week honeymoon with my wife and we stayed in all these amazing places, high, low. We stayed at world-class hotels. We ate street food and we just did it. We went to people's houses that were locals. We learned how to cook with them. And I remember feeling really happy at one of the hotels that I was at. And it was a place I had had my eye on for years. I'd wanted to stay there. And I remember wondering, why was I so happy beyond even being on my honeymoon with my wife? And I realized that to be able to be at that place and to not have to worry about money meant that I had done the right things for years. I had worked hard, I'd showed up every day, I saved money and I invested it. And now I get to spend extravagantly on the thing that I love. And at the same time, I don't care about things like a car. I don't need a car. I don't care about eating out that much. I hardly ever eat out. That's just not my rich life. But to go to a hotel that I love and to spend and bring my wife or bring my family, for me, that is my rich life. So for everyone, I would say, what is that thing that gives you joy? And what if you could 2x, 4x, 10x your spending? Really try to imagine what that would look like and feel like. It's probably not just doing more of the same thing. it could be on a whole nother level you have never considered.
And I came home to my wife and I told her this. I said, honey, we need to start spending more money. I said, what? I'm like, baby, I bet we could spend $1,000 a month more and get so much joy. But for her, she's from Bulgaria originally, and it was a different mentality, you know, ex-communist state. But for her, it was like, this doesn't make sense that if we spend more money, we'll be, you know, exponentially happier. Yeah. How do you have that conversation with a significant other?
It's so tough, and I went through this with my own wife because everyone says, get on the same page, have the conversation with your partner. I was like, what conversation? Like, please tell me the exact words to say, because this was harder than anything I had ever imagined. I came in with a point of view on money. Spend on this, don't spend on that. And I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking about this every day for 20 years. And what I discovered is it's not as simple as, let's take my point of view, let's take her point of view, and let's plug them together. It's not Tetris. It doesn't fit like that. We had to go back, way back, to what did our parents teach us about money? How do we think about, what does money make you feel? And I was so surprised that my wife said money makes her feel safe. That was a word I've never considered with money, safe. For me, money is growth and money is convenience. So I can pay away problems that I don't want to deal with convenience. And it allows me growth, compound interest, returns, all that stuff. But safety, what is that? That was a term I had never connected. So I asked her, and there was this message of, what if we don't have enough? What if it runs out? And I started to dig deeper, started to understand it, but I had never really considered it because I was like, if we run out, we'll go out and make more. But to say that requires a whole foundation, knowing that you can earn more, not being afraid that you can run out, and on and on and on.
Did you always feel that way? Did you
Yeah.
You always felt you could go out and earn more?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was like a soccer referee when I was in my teens. I worked at a pizza place. I knew if I wanted to make more, I could work harder. And that message is something that, in retrospect, is pretty rare. And my parents taught me that they said a phrase, why don't you write it up? We would talk about ideas over dinner. Why don't you write it up? And what they meant by that is, you have something valuable the world needs to hear. Why don't you write it up and submit it? Submit it to the Sacramento Bee, which I did. Write a book, which I eventually did. And I think everyone listening has something valuable that the world needs to hear, but no one tells them, why don't you write it up? And so when they taught me that and I internalized it, I realized I have something valuable. I need to work at it. I need to shape it. I need to understand it better. But I have something that the world wants to hear, and the world will probably pay for it if I learn those skills. So bringing it back to the partner, if you're having a conversation with your partner, the worst thing you can do is what I did, which is, here's an Excel spreadsheet, let's fill in the numbers.
Very male thing.
It's very masculine, and it's very logical, and it never works. It never works. I thought I was savvy at communication and money, but I went right back to Excel when it came down to this. Excel should not have been the first thing. It actually should have been the last thing. What I should have done was to say, I'd love to talk about money with you. I have a certain point of view on money, but that's worked for me alone. And now that we are getting together, I really want to create our money vision, and I need to hear, I want to hear what you think about it. That opens up the conversation. And then to say, when you think about money, how do you feel? If you could do anything with money, what would it be? And suddenly we would get into these amazing, beautiful conversations. I want to take my family once a year. I don't care about spending on that. Oh, really, why? And suddenly we start to craft our own shared message. So that's what I would do if I were to do it again. And the other thing I would realize is you don't have to agree on everything. It's good, maybe 75% you have shared values, but I have certain things I spend on that my wife just does not care about, like hotels. She doesn't care. She has things she spends on I don't care about. Fine. We don't have to agree on everything, but the core essentials, family, food, savings, those things, if we get those right, the rest we can afford to be different.
I'm totally having this conversation with my wife when we get home, because I just think we haven't really talked about it. Like, she'll say something every now and then, I'll be like, what are you talking about?
Why do you think you haven't had the conversation?
Well, I guess it's a good question. I guess because in my mind, I'm handling the money, and honey, we're fine.
Right.
And then she's like, but I don't know what's happening, and you know, she doesn't actually know we're fine, or maybe she's got a bunch of other concerns about money. So I think when we talk, I can say, what will make you feel fine? And I think it might mean something small. The other day she said, I don't have a pension. I think I should have a pension. And I was like, honey, that's crazy. You don't need a pension. But you know, her dad has a pension in Bulgaria, and that is the symbol of security she grew up with. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that's crazy. Like last thing we need is a pension. But now I'm thinking if that makes her calm about the money, then she's going to feel free to do so many other things and feel free to spend money when I want to spend money, which is probably why she doesn't like me booking the cabin with the hot tub, which I wanted the hot tub and I didn't get it over Christmas.
You're never going to forget that.
I wanted the hot tub. I got the sauna, but I wanted the hot tub. And she's like, it was an extra 1,000 pounds. I was like, honey, I just want the goddamn hot tub.
So this is the thing. I love this because it's the pension thing. What most partners would do, especially if you're more savvy with money, is you'd go in there and say, pensions have been eradicated and they're actually not that important and we can earn more from a 401k, whatever. And all these words start coming out and the person's eyes just glaze over. They start explaining instead of asking and saying, tell me more. Where did you hear about a pension? Who has a pension in your life? Oh, your dad. So what does that pension mean to him? And I can almost predict she would say something like, he knows if everything else goes away, at least he has that and he's safe. Safe, what does that mean? It means you don't have to worry. What would it take for you to not worry? What would it mean? And it might turn out to be something as simple as, when I go to the grocery store, I don't have to worry if there's money in the checking account. Or I can send a little bit back to my family every Christmas. And if you answer that, then all the rest of it is irrelevant. I think with money sometimes, it's the littlest things that make us feel good. For me, to know that I'm gonna sit in a certain seat on an airplane. What does it cost, an extra $150? But that makes me feel really good. And on the other hand, I just don't care about certain things that are super expensive. My computer's 8 years old. Couldn't care less. It works, great. So sometimes getting to the core of what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel good, that can take a long time. But when you get it, you discover, man, I can lead a rich life. And all I need to do is take my money and apply it there, and there we go.
This must fix relationship problems too.
It doesn't fix it.
Okay,
It's,
but help them.
It helps.
Because every one of those things where you're not communicating or disagreeing is going to manifest itself in problems and arguments and tension. So,
Yeah.
come on, fix relationships.
I'm like, use my script to fix your 34-year-old broken relationship. No, I wish. I got to get to that.
Okay.
What it does is to even have the conversation is amazing. Yeah. Because most people don't. You have to remember, most people don't even know their own attitudes about money. How could they have a conversation with their partner about it? So when you use I Will Teach You to Be Rich, or whatever source you use, you're gonna start to learn about your own philosophy on money. What do I value? What do I not? Did I ever know that I can actually achieve these returns over the long term? Wow, I figured out exactly when I'm gonna have $1 million or 2 million or 5 million. This is all math, it's not magic, it's math. And so once you understand those basics, then you can go, and because you learn the skills of communication and psychology, you can go to your partner and say, I'm so curious. I've been reading this book. It's taught me so many things I never thought about money. I would love to do it together because I feel like money is a part of our relationship that we haven't really talked about. And I would love to have these conversations together with you. Any partner would love that. Any partner. Doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter the sophistication. To know that you can do this together is life-changing.
Yeah, I'm doing this when I get back. How do you feel about joint bank accounts? What do you usually recommend?
Yeah, should we wait on that?
Keep going.
Okay. I like joint accounts. I think that the way that I've set up our structure with my wife is we have a joint account that pays our joint expenses like rent, food, and then we have separate accounts where we have guilt-free spending. So if I like to spend money on sweaters, great. That's my guilt-free spending, no problem. She spends money on her thing, no questions asked. But we have our joint numbers, and that's where we start.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll probably set that up as well. I was gonna ask you about something you call invisible scripts. You're very controversial, and I appreciate this,
Me?
actually. Yeah. about your views on some invisible scripts. The most specific one, I think, is owning a house.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd love to talk about that and also talk about the concept of invisible scripts, the fact that we have all these weird patterns and these things that we do that we don't even think about.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, I don't own a house and never have.
What?
I know.
Don't you know you're just throwing money away on rent?
And I'm a, ex-finance guy. I should know that too. So talk about that.
Okay.
Because everyone's going to freak out.
Okay, so if you talk to anyone about real estate, the first thing they say is, gotta own a house, and you're throwing money away on rent. Okay? So you have these odd phrases, and you ask them, why? Why are you throwing money away on rent? You're not building equity. Okay, we'll talk about that. And if you say, why would you buy a house? Great investment, do it for the tax deduction, and then I can afford to retire one day. So all these phrases, if you're listening, they just sound so logical because we've heard them repeated so many times. What I want people to do is to start challenging the phrases that have been fed to us by society. And if you run the math, you will discover that in many cities, including this city, it often makes no sense to buy at all. I could buy a place tomorrow, and I've been renting for 10 years. Why? Why? Why would I do that? I'll tell you why. Because you are not throwing money away on rent. Did you throw money away last night when you went out to eat at a restaurant? No. You paid for something, you consumed it, and you got value from that. If you're renting, you're paying for a roof over your head every month, and that's it. You're getting value from it. What people do with real estate is they start to factor in all these things like tax deductions, which, by the way, especially in America recently, have basically gone away. They forget to factor in phantom costs. And this is profound for people. In life, people rarely factor in phantom costs, invisible costs. So if you've got an apartment that's renting for $1,000 a month, and you've got an apartment you can buy for $1,000 a month, people say, oh, I just buy it because I build equity. What about the taxes that you have to pay here and not here? What about repairs, maintenance? What about HOA fees? What about closing fees? Now, here's the profound point. People say, well, those are factored in to your rent. Why would someone rent to you if they're not making money on it? And the answer is, landlords don't set the price based on costs. They can only charge what the market will bear. So when people say, well, of course they're making money, you need to know this. Most landlords don't even know their costs. Some landlords are profitable, but many are not. And this is the point. You need to run the numbers on real estate. In short, a good rule of thumb, at least in America, is if you can't put down 20% for a 30-year loan, you're not ready. If you're not going to stay there for 10 years minimum, you're not ready. If you don't understand what terms like PMI are, you're not ready. This is the biggest financial decision of your life. You better know the basics of it.
What's PMI?
PMI is for people who can't afford to put 20% down. They're going to give you an extra charge because of that instability, okay? And so what I want people to do is to get educated, run the numbers, because this is a huge decision. Do not listen to your uncle, your aunt, your distant relatives saying, you're throwing money away on rent. No, this is a big decision. Get educated about it. So many of the emails I get from people in financial trouble are because they bought a house and they didn't realize all the phantom expenses that would come with it. All the fees I talked about, all the maintenance, all the decorations that they're now going to do. And so suddenly they have this house, but they can't travel anywhere. They can't do anything. They have to commute longer.
So no rich life anymore.
No.
Because of the house.
Now, if the house is something you love and you really want to decorate it, or you want to live in this one dream house, be my guest. I will buy eventually. And that's going to drive people on Twitter insane, right? They think I'm blanket against buying. That's not correct. What I want people to do is to run the numbers and not take these things that have been fed to us by society, that renting is for losers. It's not. And you see this concept everywhere. The New York Times writes headlines basically implying that renters are not as accomplished or they're not as valuable as homeowners. That's not true. a rich life for people has changed. And it used to be, I want to buy a house, I want to have 2.5 kids, a white picket fence, a dog, and then I retire. That's not true anymore for a lot of people. We want to travel. Maybe we want to be bi-coastal. Maybe we want to work remotely. These things are different. And so what I want with I Will Teach You to Be Rich and Your Rich Life is to think really hard. Do I want to buy a house? Have I run the numbers? Is it worth it to me? And if it's not, it's perfectly fine to say, I'm not going to do that.
Were we taught to buy houses by the banks? Is this something they cooked up like 100 years
Yes,
ago?
yes. Who do you think has the incentive to get you to buy it? The National Association of Realtors, one of the most powerful lobbying groups ever. They want you to buy it, so they create propaganda saying real estate only goes up. Oh, when it goes up, it's good, and when it goes down, it's a great buying opportunity. So it's always good? Is that what you're telling me? No, it makes no sense. Then you have the government, which actually encourages people through things like formerly tax deductions, etc. They want people to buy houses. Okay, so there's that. And then of course there's social. There's our friends who say, oh, you still rent? Or wow, you bought this? That social approval that comes from our friends and parents is so insidious, so powerful.
I used to have someone in New York City that like, I bought a house, and I'm like, no, you bought 10% of a house. The other 90% is a loan to the bank, and you're paying interest on that. But for them, it was that thing, and it made them feel good, and maybe that was part of the rich life. But again, it's this ingrained plan. And maybe the comparison, maybe this isn't fair, but if you ever look at the mythology behind a diamond ring for a wedding, and like the whole diamond mines and De Beers and a diamond lasts forever, they've convinced you that's the only way to show your love, and you have this rock with no secondary market, and you start wondering, why am I doing this? Yeah. It's like buying a house is something similar.
That's very powerful what you just offhandedly said, with no secondary market. So for everyone watching, it's important to know people buy a diamond ring, and there's a lot of marketing behind it. I actually wrote a massive piece on how to buy an engagement ring and what I went through. And one of the things that people use to convince themselves of this emotional purchase is, well, if we ever need to sell it, we can. And what they don't realize is there's effectively no resale value at all. You can buy a ring, it could be $3,000, it could be $50,000. You go to sell it the next day, it's effectively worthless. Maybe 10, 15% of what you paid. So we use that in the back of our logical head to say, well, I'm doing it for a good reason. And that's the way we work. We need to acknowledge that. Don't deny that we buy the things we want. And in that article, I said, look, if you want to buy a ring, and if your partner really wants it, do it. In fact, go extravagant on it if you want to. But run the numbers and get educated about the facts. Don't let this little logical voice trick you into thinking this is a financial decision. It's not. And so for housing, it might turn out to be good for your friend, but it would probably be better if they were just honest and said, this makes me feel good, it makes me feel safe, it makes me feel accomplished. That would be more honest if they had run the numbers.
Now, when the housing market's going up and all your friends are talking about how they're flipping houses, and I remember when I was in New York City around 2000 or something, the market was jacked up, and when you got to dinner, all everybody would talk about was their goddamn housing prices, and you'd be like, Jesus, stop, enough. But like you said, I mean, these things go up and down. I've never, and when people say, oh, I'm gonna redo my kitchen, oh, the price of the house goes up. No, it doesn't. I've never paid for anything. I call the landlord when there's a problem, and they fix it. And then when I want to move one neighborhood in London and get the hell out, and I do that often, then I go and I go and I go. So I know I'm paying for liquidity.
Yes.
And I just make that conscious decision. But
there's so much in what you just said that we could spend hours unpacking. But for everyone, I just want to point out a couple things. Number one, you do it for liquidity, which means if you want flexibility in your lifestyle, you want to be able to potentially pack up and move to a different neighborhood, city, state, or even country, that renting allows you to do that. And the other thing is this kitchen thing. Most people, again, they think that if they redo the floors or the kitchen or the bathroom, that they're going to make that back. And if you showed them the numbers, saying you might spend $30,000 redoing this floor or kitchen, and you will get $0 of that back. Do you still want to do it? First of all, they would say, that's not true. I saw on HGTV that bathrooms always pay. You show them the actual facts. Okay, it's not true. And suddenly, now at least you're informed. Now you can say, you know what? Is it worth $30,000 for me to have this wood on this floor? If so, awesome. You should do it. But part of living a rich life is being honest with what am I spending on it and why. When I go to a nice hotel, I love to spend on it because I come back from lunch, the room has been made up, and there's little details in there that weren't there before.
The mint on the pillow.
Yeah, things like that. And I realized it makes me feel that someone is there looking over me. It's almost like, it's like having a parent there to take care of you. And I think deep down, a lot of us love that. Now, we might express that through a hotel. That's a relatively rare one. We might express it through taking care of a partner or being taken care of. Maybe you love when your partner cooks for you or helps you with your clothes, whatever. For me, that's my thing. The hotel, it feels really good to know that someone is there watching out and making sure water's refilled and things like that. I know I sound insane, but this is what I love. This is my rich life.
Does this ever make you now examine your own
Oh yeah,
mind?
I'm like, well,
lay down on the sofa.
Why do I need to be taken care of? Yeah.
Let's talk more.
This turned into a therapy session. But what I think is important is I'm comfortable knowing that this sounds insane to most people. This is my rich life, not yours. And I want everyone, as they dial it in, as they start to get really refined, whether it's with a $30,000 income or a $3 million income, your rich life is yours. And you should dial that in over time so that it becomes uniquely and unapologetically yours. If a house is part of that rich life, amazing. Do it. Get informed, know the numbers, but do not make decisions on buying anything from a car to a house because society told me so. Right? Real estate is religion in America. It doesn't mean it's right. We should examine it. It's a financial purchase as well, and we should understand the numbers.
Yeah, really well said. And the phantom costs are so big. In London, there's something called a stamp tax. A great name, great euphemism. And it's like 5 to 8% of the price when you buy a house. So, you know, because I used to be in finance and I understand liquidity, I was just like, has anyone noticed? This is crazy. You know, you buy a couple £1 million house and that's like 150,000 pounds, not to mention the bid offer if you want to move and get out of that thing. That could be another 5–10% of the cost. So that's crazy.
So people don't understand when you say 5%, that you have a lifetime of knowledge. But to the average person, 5% is like, oh, out of $1, 5 cents. Not bad. Let me give an example to people so they understand the effect of fees on returns. This is very counterintuitive. If you pay a 1% fee for your investments to be managed, right? Let's say you've got some portfolio, could be 10,000 bucks, could be 10 million bucks. And let's say you decide I'm paying a financial advisor to look over my stuff because I don't know all this money stuff, 1% per year. Most people say, that sounds good. I don't want to have to deal with this and I trust this person. Now, if I asked you for that 1% fee, guess what percentage of your returns are going into your advisor's pocket? Most people, they would say 1%, maybe 4%. The answer is 28%. 28% over your lifetime will go straight into that advisor's pocket. The math is crazy counterintuitive. 2% fees, 56%, over 50%. Why? Wall Street, as you know, is so sophisticated, it shrouds all these fees. It has convenience. They'll give you a beautiful report. If you have a lot of money, they'll let you come to their Midtown office and serve you this beautiful coffee on this awesome mug. You don't need that stuff. What I want people to know is phantom costs are massive. And I actually feel like the ordinary person has virtually no way of fighting back unless they get hyper educated. That's why I wrote the book, because mom and pop will never understand how a 1% fee could take 28% of their return. It doesn't make any sense. The math is totally crazy. I saw my mom's prospectus. She retired as a school teacher in California. You would think California school teacher unions looking out for them. I saw the prospectus they gave her for where she should invest her retirement. It was in this nice colored font, like looked like it was written by a crayon. Oh, school teacher, so cool. And then I look at the fees. They were almost extortionate. They were over 2%, and they were bundled into expense ratios and fees and annuities. How's the average school teacher going to fight back against that? And so I do think that in this world, I wish it were a little easier.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.